So today we're going to focus our energy through shapes that regenerate the hips, the shoulders, the low back, and the sinuses, and some chest openers. So what I want you to start with is just sitting on a bolster. And if you have the opportunity to place a block between the feet, and it doesn't have to be this way. You might bring just the feet together. You might add a block at its most narrow setting right between the feet. And get a feel if the knees are kind of lifting up really high, which is happening for me. I'm going to shift so that the block in the feet are a little farther out, so I can actually start to adapt this to stretch through the hips, the groins, but trying to push my feet into the block. Okay, and if you can't kind of form that pressure as this next little bit of the seated work goes, you can always just slide the block out. But this way, we're going to work with the attention on the meridians on the inner leg. We have some requests to do work with sinuses, so we're going to start with that idea. It may not be apparent to you, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so get a belt. It could be buckled up so it reinforces the holding feel, or it can be unbuckled. And I want you to bring your belt behind you so it's at the low back, right? It's at the low back zone, and you're going to hold on to it. And as you reach your arms back, you're reaching your chest and the heart up, okay? So get a feel for first pressing into the block with 2 feet, okay? And if you find it's a little too much, you can always push the block forward. That's the easiest way to go. But I want you to be able to see it, okay? So as the arms motion back, you're trying to kind of visualize lifting and the arms reaching a little bit higher behind you, even though they probably won't go very far. So relax your eyes and have that feel of the energy across the chest opening. Feel how you present the heart up, the energy of the spine lifting in towards the heart and up towards the sternum. And let your head tilt to the right side. So feeling as your head tilts right, that left side of the neck stretches, and the arms could move back or they could get closer towards your center. I like to fluctuate between the arms moving back and the arms motioning inwards towards the bolster. Bring your head back center, in breath, ribs expand. And as you out breath, head tilts to the left side. And just be curious if the neck motions the chin towards the ceiling, if it motions the chin forward or downwards, feeling where the spine moves towards the heart. Come back in center with your head, and then let go of your belt and twist to your right side. So left hand to the right knee. This way you might find that you can push into the block again with the feet. Okay, now just giving this a try, right? So as my feet press in, right, I'm stimulating, right, the whole lymph pathway here. We do quite a bit of lymph drain or really finding the way to energize the flow of lymph when we do inversions in this practice, but we're trying to start with kind of waking it up through the most challenging field, which is sitting. Okay, so as we twist to the left, we just bring that right hand to the left knee. Feel the knees kind of move apart, even as you're pushing into the block, which I suppose makes them go outwards, but feel that rotation through rib cage. The left hand could be on the floor. I suppose it could be on a block. I'm just letting mine kind of conform to my bolster. All right, now come back center and just grasp a hold of those calves with your thumbs, squeezing, right? See if you can go from the upper part of your calf, right where it's below the knee, and kind of roll it out. Squeeze and roll all the way down towards the ankle, okay? Keep that motion, so I'm squeezing, rolling the calf. They don't go very far, do they, with rolling? They just kind of go back to their stuck feel, but give a moment here where you're kind of rubbing into the calves and then you lean forward. Okay, take the block out. Bring the feet closer together now. Hopefully they're touching. And then as you lean forward, let the elbows lower down to the legs. Maybe they're really high or kind of hovering. Mine are just a little bit above the inner leg. They're not quite able to push down right now. And as the knees motion out, let the heart relax here. See if you can round a little bit. Let the back muscles start to flex. So it's as if you're going into that rounding shape, kind of a hollowing in the center. And then pressing into your calves with your thumbs, hands. If your hands are a little tired with that movement of the thumbs, just that little bit of squeezing to where the calf is pretty burly, right? And kind of the meat of it in the center, the belly of the calf. And then bring your hands to your knees and bring the knees together. And then let's go ahead and lay back. So we're going to have our block. So it is right in front of your bolster. So I got my block, the center of the bolster forward, not on top, not too far away. It's got to be right at it at the lowest setting. Okay. Then I sit on the block. Make sure you're not too close to the wall. Okay, although the wall could be nice right now to push into. And as you lower down, let the legs move forward or downwards, I guess. And then take a sandbag up across the rib intersection. Okay, so play with the attachments of the props. Okay, so I've got the whole support here of my block under my pelvis, my bolster under my ribs. I like the sand here. Some of us will have sand across the thigh lids, which actually feels really good too. And then I can decide, do I want one blanket or two? Right. I generally go with two in the beginning, but we already started with a little bit of heat into the back and the neck, so you might be fine with one. The less blankets, the better, right? Just remember, we're not trying to force any rounding in our neck whatsoever. So wherever you can open up through the chest and the valves of circulation back towards the heart and the lungs. What's interesting if you're dealing with congestion or clearing out is part of the way of resolving that is we're moving the energy up to it. And then we'll flush out, but we spend a lot of energy with this reverse flow. So as your arms stretch open, legs reach down, they can bend, they can straighten, it's all up to you. But just feel how the shoulders center back. Relax the breath and feel the motion of the ribs. So this might be a quality of when you in-breath, instead of the idea of just puffing up in the core, like swelling the belly, it's like you're trying to spread the ribs out. It's a little bit of an advanced option for breathing, but with the props under you, you can feel that feedback, right, of the body touching onto the bolster, the hips being supported by something really defined, like a block. So you can always touch to your ribs, right, and feel. And if you have a sandbag, it might actually be easier for that spreading out. So that's kind of getting us towards the rhythm and the circulation up towards the collarbones to help stimulate and energize that flow of lymph, which is the body's cleanup crew. Okay. So with the arms in this kind of vast field of openness, feel if you can motion the arms so they don't have a specific posture. You're not defining them like that. My elbows are evenly bending. You're feeling for each side individually, and that it collectively lets the mid-body open up. So breathe into an expansiveness with the ribs. Relax the throat. Right, first be comfortable with the heart open, the throat with that fluidity when you swallow, when you breathe through the nose. So it feels kind of at peace and calm here in your throat. Okay, now if you have two blankets under your head, like you've got two folded, you're going to slide one of them away and go down to just a one folded blanket. Okay, if you're already there with one, leave that. Make sure it's just under the center of the back of your head, not under your neck. Okay, and then any sand that is on, as you move it away, walk the feet in. If they're already walked in, feel the tailbone press onto the block. Okay, now what's nice about having your tailbone on the block before you slide it back to the bolster is you can feel the definition of it. And as that presses, right, just above that's a triangular bone. Okay, so I always find that interesting. Like there's a triangular bone above, right, my sacrum. And then as I move into the bolster, that should help me kind of stretch open in the back. So let's see if it works. So we're going to get a hold of our bolster. I just let my thumbs kind of weave onto the handles. If that doesn't feel good on your thumbs, you can always push it down with your elbows and make your way. But just be aware that you don't want to push it down very far. Okay, so just slow. Walk the feet in, tiptoe. And then as I layer back, my ribs kind of poof out. And then I move the bolster just a little bit down. And so I probably went maybe an inch, I bet. That was it. And then I can feel that I'm not on the block. That's like, great. No block. Now, I'm going to scoot it down just a little bit more. And as I lift up my feet off the ground, just be sure you're not touching the block. Okay, so that's kind of your measurement here. And if you are feeling the block when you lean your hips down, you're just too far. The bolster needs to go a little further down. Okay, first things first. You're going to test that by alternating knee towards the chest. Okay, now I like the block below because I like to kind of feel that touch onto it as I'm working through this next little series. Some of the things you might feel the block, but you might not be a fan of the block there anymore. You might just push it aside. So alternate knee to chest, just be, kind of improvisational about how you're going to pull onto the leg. Feel for yourself how you associate with your hips, your lower back, all those things, lower channels, right? And lower channel doesn't just mean my core, my organs, it also is going to mean the legs, okay? So next time you bring the knees both towards each other, that means they're going in, you're gonna get a ball and add the ball there, okay? If you don't have a ball, use a block. And like we did in the beginning, you might have your block at the narrow setting. All right, if you happen to have a block that's just really, really thin, that's sitting around, those always work really good for these exercises. Don't get rid of them. All right, so arms open and then knees side to side. And it's really more of a hip side to side. So as I motion through the ribs open, my hips kind of float up. They each get an opportunity to float, each hip. Okay, so feeling how you push into the ball or block. In the beginning, we had the opportunity to push into the block with our feet. And now we're going up a little bit to the knees, but the difference here is that we're starting to kind of charge into that, energizing the flow of lymph. So part of that's by muscle contraction, right? That's one way you can work with creating a lymphatic pump is contracting. So we pushed in with the feet on the block, now the knees squeezing the ball. So as I move in center, take a moment where you just squeeze the ball and see if you can entertain that focus of maintain it, not entertain it, but it is kind of entertaining for the legs as I press in and then I relax the grip on the ball. Okay, Now, move the ball aside and let's take it into legs up, just viparita. Get a belt, okay? But first things first, we just flush it out for a few. You can shake it out. You can have a little leg tantrum. You can circle the feet, or you can just let them be in a still point. This is pretty good, okay? So make sure that blanket, I mean, when you're pushing your bolster around, you probably are pushing yourself on it. The blanket slid down. Usually it does not stay as far back as I like it. Now, I don't need to work on rounding my neck anymore. So this way, if I have the blanket right at the occiput, so you can kind of work your fingers to the curve at the neck, at the brainstem. And right at that point at the top, you're going to find where it connects into the brain, that back lobe, and just let the blanket push in there, or you're pushing on it. Okay, take your belt and make a loop and scoop up the feet. And as you scoop them up, you want to be sure that this is buckled if you're going to let go. Okay, if you don't like to let go and you prefer holding as your feet push out, that's fine. Okay, if you're a little shaky, I mean, there are days every once in a while I go into this and it's like, I wonder why I'm shaky, right? It's a little shaky. So use the hold on the belt to help that. That should make it almost go to stopping. But of course, you can go free of holding and see what happens with the positioning of your knees, because the feet are fairly clear. They're going to go out. They might even turn out. They might circle. Now let the feet be happy feet. They're not being stepped on. Just let them move around, or let them be still, just without any pressure pushing into the feet. So the knees, though, I think are kind of interesting. So I like to play with it, how the knees can motion out. I don't want to pull them in to turn them, twist them at all, but I do want to feel like they're relaxing, and the circulation around the knees, which is the tone of the ligaments, the joints here. So I want to get a feeling of the inner thigh. The whole circulation of the feet draws down, the lymph drains to the inner thigh, but it's also draining the blood back towards the heart. Okay, so you don't have to have the feet that far out to get that benefit. You know, don't feel like it's some sort of flexibility exercise. This is about the science of the circulation here in our body with all our fluids, right? Our 70 pints of lymph fluid, our 30 of blood, right? There's just a lot of fluids in there to help, and it's valuable to do these patterns, these exercises. Not all day long, but you know, every once in a while. Do a little intensive for your self-care. So as the spine centers and has elevation at the hips, let's feel a few breaths here. If you're not already breathing well, this is the time. If the feet turn in a little bit, that's okay. They can turn in, but the knees don't necessarily turn in. It's pretty interesting. If you feel and check out the feeling of the knees, they can be pretty relaxed. And the feet could pivot in, isolating from the knees. That's only when you're upside down. It doesn't work when you stand on your feet very well with that option. Let the belly really lift and expand. Okay, now bending your legs, reach up to the belt. You could do this blind, right? You could go with just feel. And then as you pull, bring the belt closer towards your chest, but really the focus is your feet are together. That's the key. And it's kind of nice to do this with your eyes closed sometimes, so you can just really feel your balance. You're connecting into alignment in a different way. So you might try that. You can put an eye pillow on if you have one nearby, off and on. Okay, left leg lowers down, right leg is lifting, and you have option here. I would say first things first, add your sand to the left thigh, the top of the thigh. Okay, right at the hip flexor-ish quad. We call it the hip quad, which, really is branching into hip muscles here. So when I keep that reach with the left leg, I feel it's like these opposite spine process, right? So I've got my spine in a bit of an arch now on one side, and one side it's flexing. It's a great exercise for that area. So even though it looks kind of leg focused, there's also things going on in my ribs and my back. I'm using props, so it's kind of easy to do. So it makes it a little more comfortable. So let's take our belt in that big loop. It can either be, I'll show them the most comfy version for people. Sometimes just a hold, bring your palms together, the shape of a steeple, right? So I have the belt at the webbing. So I'm either here or I bring it around my head. And it's not on my neck at all, just my head. So as I bring the belt back to the shelf at the back of your skull, you want to get a feel of your head tracking back and just organize the muscle motion of feeling that you push into the belt, but you also let your head lean back. So you got to find what is balancing for you. Yeah, I think these two exercises are really interesting for balance work. They're not your typical balance activity. That's usually standing on one leg, those kinds of things. But now, as you release back into the belt, let it hold you. If it's slipping, sliding away, you got to make sure it's firm, right? It's connected. It should not be slipping. It's not acceptable. You don't want to be trying to struggle here. And so if it doesn't work for you, you can always hold the back of your head, but make sure you've got a belt connection. That's good. That's key. Okay. So when your head leans back, you might even trace the outline here of the neck. So you could feel the pointy spots at the cervical vertebrae, the one that sticks out, right? C7, the base of the cervicals. See if right above C7, you can just let that lengthen. So I let my head lean back. It's kind of nice. This doesn't have to be a harsh pose on your neck. I want you to realize that it's not intended to be making things more difficult in your neck. It's making it a little bit more hardy. No turning your head side to side. I know you might be looking at the screen, but just avoid too much twisting with the neck on this one. If possible, no twisting. Okay, once the right leg feels kind of loaded with energy, right? I'm feeling it probably more around my knee than I ought to, so I'm going to do a little nano bend. And it might be shaky. It's okay. Okay, let that left side of the abdominal stretch a few more moments. The left foot's going to likely pivot out, so you do your best at feeling the heel and the toes up. Probably toes in, it's going to be toes up for you on the left foot. Okay. Now, when we shift sides, I want you to give it a try for you can either move your sand to the floor or on your torso. Okay. And when your left leg goes up, you can hold the back of your head if this is the version you're doing. And then as you start to lower down that right leg, it goes pretty fast, doesn't it? Just feeling from the back of your pelvis down. I feel from my front of my pelvis. So it does take me a little bit of energy to feel my lower back touch the bolster. And then as I move the sand down the top of that right thigh, so extend it. Not everybody has their sandbag lengthwise, some have it turned. If you have never tried it across, it actually feels pretty good. So mine's a little bit both. It's kind of pivoting just on, it contours the muscle of the leg, the bones, the muscle, because they're all, slanted, they're all in a contour or a curve. Okay. So you might do a little bit of bending of the left knee. It is a new leg, right? Maybe it's not like you all of a sudden got a new leg today, but it's a different side. So if we have the same length with the belt, the loop, you might be surprised that this side responds like it's more flexible or it's not. So check it in with the length of the belt in the beginning. Does it need to loosen up? Do you want to tighten it up? Now, if your foot is tingling and you notice a difference on the second side, but you don't want to change it and your foot's tingling, it's a message. It's a message from the foot gods. Help me out. I'm falling asleep, right? You can always loosen it up or tighten it up or change where the leg is, a little bit centered. Okay. All right, arms are open. I think out to the side is perfect. Sometimes I like to do this one with my arms resting on the bolster though, so my hands can relax even more. So just simply feature sensation, breathing slow. Okay, now as we shift the sand off the right thigh, what I'd like you to do is move the sand over towards the left side of your bolster. Okay, then we'll hold on and we'll slide the belt off the back of our head if that's what you have. If you're holding the belt the whole time, you're ahead of us. Okay, so then we hold the belt with the right hand, the left foot still in the belt, cross the left leg to the right. Be real easy with the knees, both knees, right? Maybe you bend the right leg a little bit, the left leg a little hinge at the hip, the knee. If you try to pick up the hip like you're hiking it up, okay, just avoid that. See if you can just give some slack in the hip. So not kind of pulling it up into the socket, let it rest in the socket. Okay, we're trying to restore, regenerate, not heighten up tension. Okay, we got no problems with that. It's down regulating even in the joints, okay, even in the muscles. So bend the left knee, okay, feel the knee just point back up to center, doesn't have to go to your chest, and then just switcheroo. Right foot in, left hand holds, cross it over. Yeah, feel for your hip. Like if you could even center your attention for right now, just in that right hip. Like, oh, hip. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to gain some circulation in the hip to improve the balance, the connection into my lower back. So for me, I like these for my back. I know you might go, I feel it in my hip, but it is a direct line. And how else are we going to help the back, right? If you have other ideas, let us know. But some of them are going to be hip crossovers. And then we're going to go to the side sage pose. That's one of my favorites for back. Okay, now bend the right knee, please, and just slip the belt off your foot. Bring your knees to point in towards your chest. Huddle them in. See if they can do their own movement without clutching onto them, right? See if they can just wander side to side, knees on their own, hips on their own, motioning. And then as you feel that it's just your body weight, just your natural weight and pressure, right? Don't try to aggravate it or push it deeper. Just roll with it and roll left and then come down. If the block is in your way, you're going to be pushing it over the other side of your blankets anyway. Take a block, move it over near your blankets, and start to get side up next to your bolster again. I know we probably spend most of the class always on a bolster. Hugging our bolster, leaning into the bolster, sitting on it. Lots of bolsters, huh? Okay, lots of bolstering. So get a couple blankets and stack them up. If you've got beach towels, that works actually really well too. I mean, you just want a stack of blankets or pillows or whatever you have that's a little softer than the bolster. It's about the same height. I think for this one, since our neck has been in more of a flex position, we're going to be arching it a little bit, which is really good, right? This is what we want for our neck. So if you use a ball for side sage, get it. If you use 2 blocks, get them both, stack them up, one at the low setting and then one at the higher. If you don't ever use blocks for this part, you don't even have to get them organized. You know your side sage the best. Okay, so you're going to be leaning. Now what's leaning is I'm trying to learn this way. When I go to the side, I just place my legs in a sage pose, right? If you have just experience with this, you just have your left thigh, next to the bolster, right thigh back. And you want to use the dynamic of reaching with the legs. It's just easy. Easy does it, right? This should not be, you're forcing things in. You're just using the props to guide you to stretch the back, right? The side, and then thus the back. So our back is usually in the same position most of the day, right? It's pushing, everything's going forward and rounding. So take advantage of this curve opportunity. Take them to curves. So if you have a round bolster, I forgot to mention, you can use it on side sage. They're wonderful for the side poses. There's a few things the round bolsters are good for, but that's a definite plus. So when you lean into the left side, the sand could be on your hip, it could be on your ribs. It doesn't have to be on. But as you let your head relax into the blankets, feeling where your head moves, right? Does it move down to the left? Does it rotate back? And it's all okay, right? Sometimes I like to roll on the back of my head for this one, let my right arm open, or let my arm rest down onto my hip. It really could be either, or maybe it feels more complete for you to have your hand on the blocks, 1 or 2. But feel that you're going to arrive in this position, side sage, breathing the pose. So breathing that concentration into the ribs. It's kind of hard to breathe into your hips, I think. So when you're emphasizing the props holding up at the lower rib space, that will help facilitate that stretch on the right hip. So I like to feel this part of my hip stretching. It's an unusual way of doing the hip work. I think we normalize the crossover work so much that when I push the leg back, finally I can get into my hip flexor and my psoas. But it's one of just trusting the process. It can take time. So if you're kind of held up in the quads or the hip flexors, it's just, most of us, it's probably pretty compact in rounding. Just lying around like this would be helpful, right? You can just set it up and lean into it and breathe. It's a pretty good one, sand or no sand. And if your head is starting to get a little tight, like in your neck, that is, you might turn your head down to the blankets. Right, some of these pathways and these muscles right on the side of the neck can get crazy tight all of a sudden and cause a headache, right? So it could be one of the, right, one thing that leads to it. So let your head relax down into the blanket. And you can always use your fingers to kind of glide on your neck or even close to your ear and just try to remind that area to relax. Take about 2 more rounds of breath. Slow go. And if you feel like taking 20 more rounds of breath, you can. There's no way that you have to get out of this, but I like to kind of keep it in a little bit of movement here and there between shapes. So first I would move the sand. I know sometimes we lean back and push it off with movement, but just be careful of how that will affect the knee joint because it's going to tighten up around it. So just push it away and then roll to your left so you can feel movement into the hip. Okay, although this way it feels like one hip. Okay, not like isolating hip. So now you're merging the hips to work together. So have a bolster here. If you're a little sensitive in the knees here, just put a blanket. It's really no big deal. You just add it. If it makes it feel better, that's just a lot better, isn't it? If it makes it feel better in the knees, you just put padding. Okay, now we got our hands to lower down in the gap between the bolster and the blanket or blankets, and then arching. The wall is, I think, a tremendous help here. So when I push my feet into the wall, I can feel the hips working together in tandem. Okay, and feel the knees. Maybe you lift one, maybe you lift both. Just kind of play with the feel of one unified hip, or you could say it's the pelvis strengthening part. This is a really great, let's wake up the pelvis, the femur, the femurs, okay, lifting. If you feel like you could be in this a little longer, we don't need to push into our wrists more. That's not going to be useful. But lower down so you get a little bit of tummy time, okay? Elbows down, going towards that Sphinx position with the arms, palms open, but see if you can still carry through with your chin reaching forward. Okay, heart is open. Well, at least it's stretching. Okay, now your feet can push into the wall and see if you can activate pushing into your feet and then activating through the legs. Maybe the knees lift up a little bit and the pelvis tone. Now this I find, I usually do this with the bolster lengthwise. I'd like to change it up by taking from my teacher, like let's just switch it up and see how it changes in your abdominal motion. So let's try it the other way. Let's push the blanket away and then turn the bolster lengthwise. Before you lie on the bolster though, a couple cat cows. Now you can be on your elbows if it's too much, right? You can lower down. If you're going to go to cat cow with your elbows down, you might have to move your bolster away though, because otherwise you'll be all on the bolster. Okay, so round back, chin to chest. Arch the spine. Okay, really get a feel of that feature of spine's motion. Inhale, arching. Okay, I know sometimes we go through the motions, but feel how the hips work with rolling under in the back of the pelvis, the femurs motion back, and then the femurs as you lower down, extend or extend. Eka femur. Okay, lower down. All right, Sphinx pose. Oh, I think I like this version better. I don't know about you. I think this feels easier. I don't know why when the bolster's across the hips this way, horizontal. I'm not sure why, but if you got an answer to that, let us know. Write it down. So reach through the feet into the wall. Maybe you find the others better. And working on, I think it's because it's more support and protection for my spine, even though it's the front of the spine that the bolster is pushing into, that's the front space. But when I have something higher up in my front space, a bolster that is, it supports my lift, my arch. It's like a hand kind of pushing you up. Okay, elbows down, sorry, elbows down. I'm getting a little ambitious here. Breathe, hands slide back. Remember, cobras don't have limbs, so we're not going to push into our hands. Cobras don't have limbs. Hands can lift up a little bit. So working that strength of your back. Okay, palms wide, arch, chest high. This is as high as it's going to go, I think. Come back to hands, knees. Push back into down dog. If you're not feeling like you want to push back into your hands because of the wrists, what I would recommend is bring your elbows down. Bring your hands together, clasping, making a fist and lifting the knees up. Now this is good. I mean, if I go with this, I really feel my sinuses like a lot. It's like, whoo. So the forearms get a little more charge, I think, for that circulation. We're all so used to this one. I mean, we're just doing this all the time. So you might change it up. You might do a little bit of down dog with the heels up. Really flood the upper respiratory tree here. Flood the zone here. Okay, or if I have my elbows out, you can always hold a block between your hands on this one too. If you feel like I just can't get up very easily, have a block, wide setting, elbows just rest down, hands push into the block and lift up. And your forehead might touch the floor. It just might. Don't worry about it. If it touches the floor, so what? You're putting that flow back towards the upper respiratory tree, bronchial tubes, throat, lungs. Okay. All right, warming up the upper back, no doubt. Back strength. Now come on down. Okay. So your upper body and your sinuses, all the circulation to the top gets a little charge. Now, let's take ourselves to the next side stage. So if you've got blanket back here, I would say just come on down to your hip, stack them up. Okay, take the bolster to the side. That's not already there. And then as you prepare, okay, so we got the prop support and we lean the knee down. Now I like this cushion of the ball because it just gives this responsiveness into this ligament. I just like it. You know, this feels like the right thing to do, but some people don't, it's really, there are some that just doesn't do anything for them. So it's okay. Right, if you like it, go with it. If not, you don't have to be part of that ball thing with the knee. So as the left arm stretches overhead, feel if that's too much. Let's say overhead's too much. You might be elbow out. You might be left arm down. But what is key is the weight in your hip. Right, the right hip has weight, and what's even better, I got to take a sandbag on my left hip, which is now going to weight down to my right hip. So if you're kind of thinking about the bones, how they layer right now, if you're just focusing on the bones, weight 10 pounds all the way down to the right hip that's got all of the body weight on it. So that could be enough for you. You could just relax here on the right side of your head. Your left arm could be resting on the right or the bolster and receive the benefit from that. You don't have to do more. Okay, but if reaching the arm overhead feels okay for you and having that range of motion is important for your shoulder and your neck, go for it. Okay. And there are some that do this pose that are really working on neck stuff that will go to this level where they'll have the arm, the right arm, the arm below is going to stretch this away, open, then the head down here. And it's a swimmer stretch, but I'm not so sure I want to do that with my joint, but I think some people get benefit in their neck. So if you've got a lot of neck tightening things that you end up having to do, you might want to go inquire into that one a little bit more. Let me know. Because that can be really effective for the neck. If all other things kind of fail and your arm is fairly mobile, then you can probably try those things out. So let your head find relaxation. It might just be the brain, the bones, not inside at the upstairs, right in the computer, but see if you can just feel movements of breath and let that be what you're harmonizing with, is the breath. It can only help. Ribs motion with the breath. Just feel that weight. Feel what reaches out of the weight. Feels good. Now finally utilizing the left side body, whether there's sand on the hip or not, and you are trying to let that hip stabilize, not trying to push it back, but noticing the points of awareness from your left hip to your armpit chest. Okay. Now this is where we're going to bring some care to when we come up to sitting. I feel it's so much easier when I'm in this pose than when I'm seated. But the reality is the seated field will help bring some strength into to the vertebral column, right? So this is a little more slack and easeful. It has its place, but it's nice to integrate into both. Okay, let's try it. So you're going to just move the sand. I would say you can just push it to the left because you'll need it there anyway. And then carefully feel how the rib rotunda goes right. It turns. And then you bring yourself up and you take a seat on your bolster. All right. So here we are. We got blankets behind us. We're going to just slide them in, pull them right next to your bolster. I'd say get your block because you just don't know your blocks if you're going to need them for your knees. I'd say I'm going to demonstrate something a little bit extra protective for knees. And if you don't need it, then okay, you don't need it. All right, so right leg is out. Block is going to go between, okay? I'm going to actually add a block here under my left knee. Then I'm going to have a block between my left foot and my right thigh. Okay, so if you're not really clear about it, this won't be mirroring you, but I'll demonstrate with the exact verbal, okay, and the look. So my right leg is out. I have a block under my knee, and then my block is between my left foot and my right thigh. Okay, so this is going to create a spacer here and support for my lower back. Okay, I'm adding the ball under my knee because I like extra support. You might find your knee is just as happy as a knee could be. So if you got a happy knee, okay, great. But keep that to yourself. So ball or no ball, up to you. Cushion it. And block between foot and leg, ball underneath. Okay, I think we got enough of those props. And then add another prop, sandbag to that left thigh. Now that you're in Props Anonymous here, you got all the props you could ever have. All right, so we're going to turn. Now I want you to use a belt because if you don't have a block over there besides your leg on the right side, it's like you don't have anything to reach to. So unless you've got 3 blocks with you, which was not required today, just get a belt. Okay. You might just use the belt. So if you take the belt, if it's already buckled up, you can motion it into a little loop. Just slide it. I mean, I guess if you don't have it in a loop, that's fine. You can still kind of pull. I just like it to be kind of fuss-free here. So I just scoop up my foot. And then I have all the belt in the world I'd ever want now. It's just long. I can put it around to the back of my right side. I wouldn't say hip, it's just behind the right leg. So place the belt in a loop at your right foot. Clearly to the arch would be good. Maybe a little lower if that's better for you. Right where it curves the deepest in your foot, the arch. Okay. Slide the left hand back around so you're twisting to the left. My left arm stretches open the chest. Clearly it's going to be this really interesting part of the shoulder that we tend to roll forward all the time. So hold the belt with your left palm open. Okay, so I don't want you to turn the hand in because that's going to rotate here. Bicep, everything here is going to turn in. So if you turn open, it's going to help your ribs, it's going to help the back. So this would probably be our best method here. We're just going to try this one. So hold on to the left knee with the right hand. If you don't like holding your own knee, that's okay. You can go above the knee. Just don't go below the knee. Okay, so I keep a hold. And then as I hold onto the belt, I'm just going to let my hand kind of rest on the blanket because I don't need to put more charge in my shoulder. It's charging. The opening chest mode is charging. So holding on and feel the turn. Left foot pushes into the block, just like we did in the beginning. We have this class has a theme to it. We'll get around to it. So as we turn, breathe. Just get a feel for lifting up through the torso. Okay, and rather being kind of full of your heart self-lifting, focus on the ribs in motion with the breath, just that. Just they expand, the belly moves too. It's all part of it. Don't leave it out. Okay, now let's take the easiest side reach, not trying to get our head to our knee or anything. Just reach to the belt with the right hand. Let the right hand reach to the belt on the right that's holding to the foot, right? Same belt. Left hand can let go. And then we bend the right elbow. And I just let my right elbow be above the knee, so it's on my right thigh. Left arm stretches over to the right side. And just get that feel of movement. I personally like to turn my head down towards my knee. And I laugh at that because it's called revolved head to knee, but I don't need to put my head on my knee. I can just look at my knee. So turning, looking to knee. Feel the left arm reach behind your back. Now, if it feels interesting for you to pull and go a little bit closer to the leg, okay, that's up to you. But you can still regenerate nicely, just letting your left arm be on your back, the left hand to the back, and your head turning gently to the right leg. Okay, now what's the point of this belt, right? It's to reinforce that line of energy from your leg to the right side of your back. Okay, so let go of the belt, thank goodness. Try to lift up with your rib cage. I know it's like you've got your head at the top, but lift up with the ribs and then turn towards front, so your front. And we're going to take the belt off our foot and we're going to take our way, move our way, since this has been kind of carved into this motion, this carving. We're going to come into either pigeon pose or seated forward fold. So if you're a pigeon pose person, you can start to get there. You just move your ball. Actually, I think I'll show the variation before the pigeon. So those of you that do pigeon, it's left leg pigeon, by the way. Okay, so my left knee goes forward. I take my sand off. My right leg goes back like this. I don't leave the sand on though for that. I'm just showing this for those of us that are doing the modification. Okay, so those of us modifying, it's left leg focus. So we'll have our block under our left foot. Knees are kind of out and up, right? They have all the freedom they need. You can put a ball under the right knee or a block if it's not enough. You can keep your sand on the left thigh. I'm not a big fan of that force, so I just find this is enough. Okay, I lean forward. I have a sense that maybe that sand, it could aggravate the tendons. It might not, but you may as well be safe than sorry because it's just a sandbag, right? So you lean forward. Okay, now those of you in the pigeon pose, you can always put a sandbag on your sacrum. So if you are here and you're like, oh, okay, I'm here and the sandbag's kind of a little bit of a bother to move on, but yeah, you can always try it. Okay, if you like pigeons, some people are just pigeon fanatics, right? You can always put that sandbag. It does feel really good on your back once you're there. It just takes a little awkward motion to get there. If you're seated in the forward fold, I don't recommend you put a sandbag on your back. Okay, that doesn't sound good, does it? But you might find, oh, this is really gets the motion in the hip and the lower back. It's kind of cohesive there. So just get that feel for a few more breaths. Breathing in, ribs expand from the back, not the front now. Just like if you're in cat-cow, remember when you do the arch of the spine and then the cow kind of curling motion of your chin in. What's tricky in pigeon though is you can't really move your tailbone, right? It's like it's not going to move under because it's completely stretched out. But you can still do the curling motion of your upper spine. Or not. Okay. Now, when we come out of this, those of you in seated pigeon, actually, you could do that cat curl, right? If you're here and you're your foot up on a little height, you could do a little bit more of that curling motion, couldn't you? You don't just move into that front space. You can motion into that lower track of the back. That's kind of nice. Okay, switch sides. So left leg goes out. Got it. Okay. So block between the right foot and the left inner leg. Yeah. Just let that leg kind of reach down, right? You might need a ball under the left knee. It doesn't, if it's like it's really high up from the ground, you know what happens when we push into it is it's gonna hyperextend and slam the knee a little bit. I think it really does. It wrenches the back of the knee. So up to you if you want to do that. So block goes in the right knee. These are all extra proppings, right? So if you decide you just want the block between your foot and your thigh, and that's the only prop you're going to use with this whole thing, you can just get rid of the idea of the ball or the other block. Okay. Then we add the sand to the right thigh. Okay. First things first. Okay. We get our belt. We got a little bit of a loop, little one. Scoop up the foot, bend your knee if you need to get your foot. Easy does it. Belt goes around to the left hip, and I turn left hand to right knee, and I twist. Oh, this one feels good. So I'm trying to encourage you to let the right shoulder, and you know, if it feels like it's kind of meshed with the chest, so the right side of the chest and the shoulder feel like kind of they're cement-like here. What you might do before you really get enamored with the belt thing is just kind of do some shoulder holds, right? Just have your right hand on a blanket stack, left hand holds the right knee, just kind of scoop it around. Because once you hold the belt, right, you kind of can't do that anymore. It's the deal is up, that the whole game is up there. Now you're focusing fully on the upper respiratory tree. So breathe, right? Feel embodied with your breath. Ribs and all, right? Costal breathing. Right? The idea is just to be well, right? It's to be healthy, breathe well. It's all we want, right? That's it. If I can do that, I'm golden. So that's our goal here. Just use the poses to kind of brush off what's not serving you, all that stuff. So feel the arm moving back. Yeah, I'm liking this side a little more with that. It's a little zesty in my arm. So as I reach down with the left hand to the belt, that's holding onto my left foot a little better now because I'm pulling with my left hand, gripping onto the belt. Now this doesn't mean that you're holding with the right, didn't hold your foot up, but it's closer to the foot, right? So as you bring the right arm to reach, take your time. Maybe you don't go very high with the arm. Maybe you have your right arm at your back the whole time. You can always put your right hand, the knuckles to that mid to lower back and feel the curve, right? Remember, you want to focus on the curves, right? Not flat. So as I feel that reach, and the arm going up is just it's just an arm going up, right? It's not like it's enlightenment or something. It's just finding, how do I get that motion internally to be vibrant? Right, that's a great thing. Like, oh, I can feel my ribs, I can feel movement, warmth in my body. Okay, now let's let go of the belt. Come on up, try to lift with the crown of your head, up, 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 up. Turn back to neutral. And then come into your pigeon of choice, right? Some of us took the pigeon pose with the right knee forward. Well, we're all gonna go right knee forward. Hopefully, you don't have to. Left leg moves back. Sand on the sacrum. That's option one. Sleeping pigeon, head down, maybe on your hands or elbows down center. Those of us that are seated, or decide, today I'm going to do seated. The right foot is on the block. You can have a ball under the left knee or a block. And as I lean forward, I can work with the arch of the spine and that movement right through the back. And it comes from the back, right? It's not as if your spine is there. I mean, the spine it's all pretty close to the front anyway, but if you were to go in there and check it out. But you do want to kind of feel that hardware, right? And you want to think about the bones as being your hardware. Like, I want them to stay really toned, some of them with strong density. So the movement is key, right? Not just keep it still if you're doing the seated position, maybe a little bit of fluidity. And then you could tip forward and breathe. It only helps. And if you're in that forward folded pigeon pose, remember it's right leg forward and feeling the weight into that right hip. These are both pretty good hip weights, right? So we use resistance in the practice to work with the bones, right? With the, you could say the intensity helps the density, right? That's kind of true. And so finding where that focus is, breathing slow. Okay, now as you come on up, if you're in that sleeping pigeon, swing the left leg forward. Okay, and then come around to your back. So move the blocks to the side. And if you need to do a simple cobbler's pose, you can do that. Lazy cobbler, lean forward. But what I'm recommending here is that you just slide back and carefully move your props so then you're on the floor. In between the props, you're going to push your bolster down to the base. It could be at the wall. If you're fortunate to have a wall nearby, I would say use the wall and take your belt, and you want one blanket at the lowest fold here. Like if it doesn't even get folded, that's really good, but you choose. So you're going to take your belt. Okay, this is a little too big of a loop now, so I'm getting too loopy with it. So what you're going to do is bring your feet, your legs into the belt and bring it around to the center of your thighs. Okay, now if you find this ain't working for you, you don't like to have your legs in this belt, you can use a block between the knees. That's fine. You can have a block like that. We'll get to the ball though, but for now, I'm just going to go with the belt because I love this kind of teaching. Okay, so I'm going to be careful here. I got too many blankets now. I'm going to get rid of one, put it off to the side. I'm going to lower arm down to one. This is probably just this too much fold. Okay, we don't want to round the neck anymore. Some of us need it. We already have, our neck is really, if it gets too rounded, it's hard for you to go back. It's really hard. Yeah, I've seen someone have just stack and they really can't go back because they're so rounded. So if that is what's up, that's what's up. You know, you work with what you got. So you got your belt. I want you to bring it so it's it's not right at the knee, but it's not far. So it's kind of mid-thigh, a little bit up or down to the knee. And as I push and lift up, I have to push into the belt. That's what I want you to feel is the resistance. Like the knees like to go out. Don't worry, let them go out a little bit. How wide should the belt be? Like, should it be tight? Yes, it should be like you feel it when you lift up. It shouldn't cut off all blood flow. It's not ideal. Shouldn't hurt, but it's going to help you with that alignment. So I push into my feet on the bolster, I lift the hips up. Okay, so I'm stretching through the hip flexors. Now, when I glide down the spine, really meet the tailbone. Tailbone meets floor. Okay, arms go overhead, lifting, try to really stretch through the armpit, chest, hips up. And then as you exhale, lower through the spine. All the way to the base. Okay, now take a few of these, which it's just free flow. Maybe you go all the way to the spinal basin. Maybe you don't, and you kind of pick it back up. You can play with it. Maybe you like to feel the sensory feedback across the ribs. That feels kind of nice. And I've strengthened in my hips right when I almost touch down, but then I go back up. So think about things we do like squats. There's different exercises you can do to really target these areas. This is really a good one, right, in our yoga field. I know you came here to restore, but sometimes it's nice to integrate a little bit of action into the bones. So I'm just hovering just a little bit, and then I go back up. Okay, now the glutes are all awake. Like, okay, we're busy. We know what to do here. We keep strong. Now, as you lower down through the spine, okay, now we're going to take the ball. So this thing with the belt might really bug you, but what I want you to try, just give it a try. Place the ball into the left rear and move your hips side to side. Now, the reason I want your belt, try it, is so that you have to move your hips to massage the glute. Otherwise, people just move their knees around. It's like, I don't know if it's just uncomfortable with moving the hips, or maybe it just doesn't have flexibility. Don't worry about it. You try to roll on the ball. So the belt might help some things. If you got knee stuff, it might actually feel more in the knee issues. So I want you to really work into your hips. If it bothers you, just unbuckle and put the belt to the side. No one needs to feel like it's more challenging. Should feel allows you to kind of group into the roll. Okay. And by now you can fold your blanket up a little higher if you decide. No big deal. But press into the ball. What is kind of interesting about the bell is it kind of fixes the frame of the legs. So you don't need to tighten it up, but you can feel it supports them. So you can focus into the ball. Move it to the other side, right? So the knees don't swerve as much. It's just focusing on the hips. Hips, hips, hips. Okay, and as you glide across, you're moving into the surface muscles. You're like taking up residence there. Here I am. Feel for what it is. After all that glute work, right? You deserve it. So feel the pressure. If you want to kick a foot up, you probably can. It's not like the belt's gonna not allow you to move a leg. You'll have a leg to move here. Okay. Now, as I glide across, take a few more. Maybe you quicken up the movement. You make a faster pace with rolling. Right at the border of the glute, right to the edge of the hip. That feels always really good from the rear, right to the border, right near the lateral rotator. And that's what we're going to go into is the rotators. Okay. So release down. Okay. Move the ball to the left. Okay. Bring your knees into your chest and get the belt off. If you want to unbuckle it, it's probably easier just to unbuckle, but however you move it away. Now, take a bolster, kick it to the right. Even if you're one that always loves to have your feet on a crossover, you could do that, but maybe try it this way. So we let the right leg lower, we kick the left leg on top of the bolster. If you need something else on top of the bolster, like another blanket or a block, that might be useful. And then I would say add the ball first towards the sacrum and then the sand second. Okay, so orient into all these things you work towards, right? Your back kind of heat and warmth in your back, and then crossover in the hip. The base leg, I'll repeat it again, needs to bend to help the stretch in your abdominals. So if I bend through the legs, I really feel like the legs are bending so much, my hip is getting a twist, a little bit into the hip, and it actually bypasses the lumbar because that stays in the arch. And then into your ribs, twist you go. All right, let your head turn to the left. Make sure you got enough padding under your head. If you need a little bit more curve under your head, a little more lift, just a little bit is good. And if you're feeling just really tight in the neck and you want your blanket right up to it, just go for it. That's okay. We're at the final spinal. Comfort is what's important here. Just kind of learning from your practice ways to create a safe environment so it doesn't feel like it has to effort too much here. And if the breath is kind of fast, see if you can start to slow it down. We've got several moments ahead to get to that heart rate lowering. And this would be a good one to do a little study for yourself, especially since we've done a sequence of actions. And then now we're going into a little bit less and a little more interaction, organs moving out with the breath. Okay, now before you come out of this side, feel the left shoulder roll. See if it can roll down and in. It may not get to touch the spine. The scapula is going to probably be a little bit out from it. It's just interesting, right? To feel this openness in the front left space. Reach in the left arm. And then just slide the sand. If you're just getting into this side and you want to stay longer, you certainly can. Okay. So those of us that come out, we take it slow because now we got no ball under our sacrum. So it's like, okay. Right? There's no cushioning. So the bones can use that cushioning, right? Having something to push into with the nerve endings. I mean, there's so many good things with the ball. So bend the left knee, cross the right leg over to the left side with the bolster right there. And, you know, you kind of feel, we've done some variations of twist today. Mostly the seated field, right? We did a little at the very beginning, a tiny bit of a tuning. And so we've done some work. Now we're going to use the whole body to take the twist, right? Because you aren't trying to keep prim and proper in your core up. You're just letting it all kind of reach open. So the sand on the outer right thigh could be right at the hip. Yep. It could be closer to the knee. It's up to you. I would say go with feel versus like just responding to the order of how I'm applying all these things. Keep kind of the outline of it. Like the outline is she's got a bolster on the left side. Maybe you add a blanket to it because you need that. Maybe you don't use a sandbag. Some people bring both legs over to the side, both of them, and hug the bolster between the knees. So if that feels better for your spinal twist, then I would say go for it. But the key would be to feel up high at the twist, right? So my ribs, right? And it will take your breath away. Like twists are really great. They're great support for that lymph pump as well. That's another one for the lymphatic system. What creates the lymphatic pump is twists and inversions. So we're ending with those. Okay, right now I have this luck of the block is holding my right arm open. So it does feel kind of helpful. It's not that easy, but it is holding the chest open. So head might roll right, it might stay centered. Apply a few more breaths. And the breath will move things around inside. I mean, you might not feel you're that connected to the organs, but I think you are, right? Sometimes our nervous system connects to them really fast. So that just tells you the breath is an application of movement, right? You can feel your breath moving. You can feel the diaphragm moving down and the organs kind of go out of the way, right? Okay, let's move away for diaphragm to go. And they're in their same little cell, right, of fluids, but they're trying to push things around that get stagnant. Or prolapse, which happens from sitting, standing for years, right? Okay, move the ball, move the sand, keep going left, roll, and then come on up and take a bolster to the wall. Okay, don't overthink it, just push it right up. Now, if you don't use a bolster at the wall, no problem. You can use a blanket that's folded. Like oftentimes I'll see people that work much better with the blanket folded this way, but much better. Some people this is way better. Or they use two blankets. It just is a better medium for them for the movement for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. You want to do it. You want to get upside down. Okay. So if you put your legs up on a couch or a bed, that's okay. But the difference for this is that we have our pelvis up. Okay, so I lean on the side and then I bring my rear towards the wall. And then it's as awkward as it can, it never gets that, it's always a little awkward to get to that position, the cannonball, and go up. But once you're upside down, right, you can move your way to the wall and you can also be away from the wall. It's not like the gold standard that your seat is at the wall. In fact, there's plenty of teachers. My teacher teaches it away from the wall. I just like how other teachers do that variation with, I like to be close, but some teachers have some space from the wall, so it's easier on the hamstrings, right? So if you find your hamstrings are just not liking it, then you have to be a little away from the wall. You have to adapt to your needs, right? It's really key. So if I put my sand on my feet and I have that reverse flow, I know what's happening because I just feel better from doing it too. So even though when I'm in it, I don't always feel, this feels like there's a subtle energy difference when you get out. So sometimes what happens after is what's better than what's happening in it. Okay, so you're trying to focus on, you want to create a good, in some key focuses here is the pelvis presses, the tailbone press, the ribs evenly reach. So you got this kind of uni rib thing going on, uni hip, right? It's all connected, uni legs, uni feet. And then the arms go to goalpost or they're lower. So if you're really trying to champion lowering your heart rate and blood pressure, I'd say go arms low because it's only going to be good for that. These little things matter. So as you in-breath, you can have one sand on the feet, or you might have your sand on your ribs. You could have an eye pillow on. But fluctuations of breath and the fluctuations of mind is a different experience, right? That frontier, right, can only be supported by the certainty of that breath, motion, but it's the focus on the breath, not on just that you're bringing your attention to it. Feel the belly moving. Now with the shoulders back, the chest comfortably open. It's not excessive if the arms are low, right? You won't feel that span quite the same as if they're out. So it's really up to you, but I like to find that concentration of creating that change with the heart, relaxing the face. So we have that bit of cranial sacral rhythm, right? Because our head is lifted, that cranial support, and then my pelvis is lifted, the sacrum is up, and then I have pressure with the legs, the thigh bones resting in my hips. So now you're going to shift your feet away from the wall, not too far back, because you want to find that verticality, right, with the legs. And then as you soften the knees, you can toss your sand overhead or just feel the hinge at the knees, the reach for the sand. And then as you place it back, hug the back of the legs. Okay. And it's almost as if you don't feel that much difference after you remove the sand. It's like you still have that circulation support. It's just lower, or you could say higher at the back of the legs, depending on how you're witnessing the body arrangements here. But feel the arrangement. Right, we're kind of making a little floral arrangement at the end here, right? The idea is, even though you don't think of your body, right, as that, maybe you don't feel like you're a florist, but why not? Let's try it. So let's roll to the side. Let our arms reach over. Push into your hands, and then you want to find that basin. The pelvis is kind of the pot, right? It's that basin. And then what lifts up from that is going to go reaching up. You got the digestive tract, things go up higher to the organs. So feeling where the spine design arches. Feel openness, and just let your hands reach up, palm to palm. Let the energy flow through you, And feel support from this practice, right? You want the residue from the practice to be with you. So as we inhale together, breathe in slow. And as we exhale, bowing into that space behind your heart in gratitude.